USD to your favorite sports talk radio show, Bix and K. As usual, he's K, I'm Bix, and we will be with you guys here for the next hour and a half until 4 p.m. Pacific Coast time.
Yeah.
K, it's been quite the week.
It's been quite the week, and what I'm really excited about, Bix, is that we have our headphones back. It feels a little more natural.
Yeah, for those of you that had the chance to tune in last week, we had some technical difficulties. Unfortunately, the radio system here at USD was actually down. We went live strictly from Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter. Now we're back with all our media up and running. So we're glad you guys can join us.
Yeah, thank you so much for rolling in. We're live on Bix's Facebook, my Facebook, Periscope, Instagram, uofsdmedia.com. We're just hitting all the platforms. Excited to be back, and I am really, really excited to jump into our first topic, the Raiders. Oh wow, I just hit the sound up. So excited to be talking about the Las Vegas Raiders, and I think we have differing views on this. Let me hear the bad argument first, then I'll hit you with the good one.
On the other hand, like Kay mentioned, I'm appalled at the NFL and Oakland Raider management. I'm a 49er fan. For all you people that know me well, I'm a 49er boy through and through. Grew up that way. It was still my team. But you always got to have love for the Oakland Raiders, the Bay Area's other major football team and another major sporting franchise. And to see them this isn't the first time this has happened, but the second time, just to have them uprooted and send them off to another city is awful, especially for the hardcore Oakland fans that have stood by this team through thick and thin.
All right, well, here's my reasoning. First of all, have you been to Vegas?
I've never been to Vegas. I am not of age to do anything fun in Vegas.
True.
So, unfortunately, it looks like we're having some problems here with the equipment. This just fell off, so we're going to do the show without it.
Will you see that?
There you go.
There we go. All right, well, clearly Bix is really mad. He's tearing stuff off in the studio. You've never been to Vegas, so one thing I want to say is Vegas always, rightfully so, in a way, gets a bad rep. But what people don't realize is that Vegas is home to multi-millions of people. Not only in the gaming industry, they're big in real estate, energy, pharmaceutical companies. There's a lot of big corporations out there. Vegas is a real town, and a lot of people forget that. I mean, well, first of all, the NFL wouldn't even consider Las Vegas to be a legitimate franchise city if it wasn't a legitimate city. So that being said, this is a great fit for the up-and-coming Raiders, and here's why. I'm going to hit you with three things, all right? One, it looks like the Vegas Stadium is going to be a beautiful new stadium funded by Bank of America. Okay, so they have the financial backing from legitimate sources necessary. This isn't the 90s Vegas run by mobster. If you've ever seen Casino, there's not going to be people, dying with this stadium being built. Nothing like that. This is a legitimate franchise move in a beautiful up-and-coming city. Two, Vegas is run on the weekends, right? So the people who are important work Thursday night, Friday night, Saturday night. Everyone leaves town Sunday, okay? This is due to parties, whatnot. Everyone leaves Sunday. That gives a perfect time for major corporations like the Wynn Corporation, Sands Corporation, MGM International to run specifically, suites specifically for Sundays. This also extends the Vegas weekend experience. You go to a Golden Knights game on Friday night. You go to the club on Saturday night. You go to a Raiders game on Sunday. Perfect experience. I have one more fact before you even try to talk. I got you. I'm very fervent about this, and if you guys agree with me or disagree with me, please comment away. Third, and most importantly, I think about who the Raiders are. You've mentioned it before. They've been uprooted. Real Raiders, the true Raiders fans, they don't need a city to be representative. They have the black and silver. They don't need a specific city. They don't need a specific area. If anything, this is even better for Raiders fans. They don't have to They don't have to go to that awful stadium.
Try telling that
hold on.
to someone who lives in Oakland.
They get to take a weekend experience to go to their favorite game, as does everybody else in the AFC, to watch their team play. So it's good on so many fronts. And those are the three main points. I'd love to hear your bad argument because I know I'm right.
All right, first things first, before I get into my counter-argument, I just want to say, unfortunately, we've been having some technical difficulties over on my side with my Facebook live feed, so I've had to take that down. I have shared Kay's live feed, so for all of my viewers, head on over to Kay's feed, and you can check us out over there, as it looks like my Facebook Live will not be working for the rest of the show. We'll get that fixed for next week. Moving on. Back to the now Las Vegas Raiders. I'm not going to argue that maybe a team should have been put in Vegas at some point. Those of you who have tuned in the show previously have known that I have never really been that big of a proponent of putting an NFL team in Las Vegas.
Yeah.
But that's less of the issue here for me. I could see a team going there. I understand the Vegas experience. I've never The problem here is with what the NFL and the Raiders ownership has done to fans in Oakland. It's disgraceful. They extorted the fans and they extorted the city trying to get them to pay for a new stadium, even though they had the money to do it easily. And the vote, as you know, Kay, turned out to be 31-1 amongst NFL owners in moving the Raiders to Las Vegas.
Mm-hmm.
The one franchise, the one team owner that voted against this decision was the owner of the Miami Dolphins.
Right.
He was that one vote, and he basically echoed the same sentiments that I'm talking about right now, in that management didn't do everything that they possibly could to keep this team in Oakland. They knew what they wanted, they had their agenda, and they sold out the city and left Oakland in the dust, trying to get a new stadium and make more profits. And I understand that's basically what these owners want.
Yeah, why does everyone forget that this is a corporation? It's all about money, and it's all about, you're going to think this is wrong, right? But it's all about creating a fan experience that also generates cash flow. Okay? That's why I think this is a great move. I mean, Oakland is a bearish city. We're gonna get to some questions after you're done making your argument. But Oakland is a bearish city. Las Vegas is a bullish city. You can make more money investing in Vegas right now than you could put in a stadium again in Oakland.
See, I understand that from management perspective, but maybe this is me being naive, but the overall, what makes sports so great is that the love that the fans have for their team. And none of this is possible. Anything, the NFL, Major League Baseball, the NBA, all these major leagues, sports leagues we have across the country and across the world, they depend on the fans, and that's what makes the world go round. So to completely uproot your team and disrespect an entire city like this is terrible.
All I'm saying is that the same Raiders fans, when the Raiders left Los Angeles, the LA Raiders fans felt the same way. Then they found a fan base in Oakland, and the LA people stayed with Oakland. Why isn't that? I mean, that's just going to happen again. There's a lot of people in Vegas that people don't realize. I want to get to a couple points made by Dan Bartels. He is going to agree with you. He says no one will go to Vegas planning on going to a Raiders game, and the city will not advertise them very willingly. He also said Oakland culture fits the Raiders. Spending lots of money on a vacation does not fit Raider culture. Let me address that in a couple ways. One, there will be a certain amount of embrace by the city of Las Vegas. They've been wanting this for a while, and they've been wanting the Raiders. They didn't want the Chargers. They don't want, for example, maybe the Rams. They felt that the Raiders were the right fit for the culture that Vegas represents. It might fit Oakland also. It also fit Los Angeles. It's the same cyclical motion that's happening, and in my opinion, true Raiders fans will stick with that team. They're not going to go to the 49ers. They're going to stick with that team.
They're certainly not going to go to the 49ers, but I don't really see many fans moving over to Las Vegas. And I would ask that question to any of you out there listening in that are Raiders fans. Are you sticking with your team? Can you see past what management has done to the franchise? Are you going to stick with the team because of the players? Are you not? What are you thinking right now? Kay and I would love to hear from you guys. But
Absolutely.
The big thing for me, too, is going back to leaving Oakland. Oakland needed the Raiders. Oakland still needs the Raiders. It's a city that's struggling. It's known a lot for its gang violence, and the Raiders were a big aspect in which that city took pride, especially now that they're just again returning to prominence and repaying all those fans that stuck with them through the years of essentially being pretty bad. And to all of a sudden get good again, and this is what management did, is they used this spurt, this rejuvenation in the Oakland Raiders to sell the deal to Las Vegas, because 10 years ago, Las Vegas isn't coming to take this team. Make no mistake about it.
Well, the thing I want to say is, yes, they did take the trend of the Oakland Raiders being good right now to the effect, but they also took the trend of Vegas being a marketable city again to that effect. So I will echo your the agreement that billionaires should pay for their own stadiums. I think that's a very prominent necessity to be made as a point. I was surprised that it was 31-1 and not, for example, 22-10. But I know that guys like Jerry Jones, who is I would say one of the biggest owners in terms of influence, he realized that the NFL as a whole is going to make more money off of Las Vegas. One thing I want to get to you, we're not going to agree on this for a long time, but on a broader subject, and any of you guys who are listening out there, what does this say about the legalization of gambling as it relates to sports? Because just 1 year ago, Roger Goodell came out and said, we're not thinking of gambling in any way. We think it's wrong. It's illegal. When they announced that Vegas, which is obviously a big gaming town, when they announced that Vegas was getting franchised, he said, we're not opposed to legalizing sports gambling.
Yeah, I honestly don't think it changes much. I've always, like I mentioned earlier, had an issue with the team going to Vegas for exactly this purpose, with the whole gambling aspect behind it. But like I said, I don't think it changes much. The league is trending in this direction anyway.
I think the whole world, or the states, the United States.
Which brings up another interesting point that I wanted to talk about, is that what does this move do to the rivalry of the Oakland Raiders and really anyone, their division rivals, all that sort of stuff? Because fans in Las Vegas, okay, maybe now you're a Raider fan, but you got nothing against the Denver Broncos. You got nothing against the Kansas City Chiefs. You got nothing against the LA Chargers. They're in your division now. But this whole corporate aspect, trying to make money in the NFL, just uprooting this team with so much history, ruins this genuine competitiveness that is so much of what we love in sports, in my opinion.
Sure. That makes sense. And I'm going to go back to a point I made earlier in the show. The same exact arguments were made when the Los Angeles Raiders left to be the Oakland Raiders. And now you're defending the Oakland Raiders because you see that the culture was created there.
But the Raiders were originally in Oakland before they moved to LA.
Yeah, but the NFL wasn't the size that it was earlier. That's like, if an NHL team left Columbus, Ohio, and came back, it would be, I think it's the same effect.
That's still your team leaving.
It is. I mean, I understand that. And obviously, I'm going to say this real quick. Thank you, Dan, for tuning in. We love your opinions. Keep tuning in for us. Thank you. I want to say this really quickly. If the Tennessee Titans, who is my team, were to leave Nashville, which they won't, I would understand the pain and agony that a fan would go through. One thing I will say, though, is that I don't think you should blame the city of Las Vegas for the vices that it holds. I think
I'm not blaming Las Vegas again. This is a separate thing. Maybe I don't like that there's going to be a team in Vegas, but I can accept that was maybe going to be a thing that happened anyway. Yeah. My issue was with the way that the Raiders left the city of Oakland.
Yeah. I think it goes back to the problem of billionaires not paying for their own stadiums. I think that's the inherent issue. And I think, if you look at just earlier this year, San Diego Chargers becoming the LA Chargers, I think that deal was significantly more sour because, the ownership tried in a way. But they were kind of uprooted by the influence of ownership. You have to remember that the way the NFL gets paid is that all owners have an equal share of the TV rights. That's the main way that they make money. They all have an equal share. So Jerry Jones, for example, he said, okay, you know what? I don't want a team in San Antonio. That was the second option. And I know that Vegas is going to attract money in terms of TV rights more than Oakland's crappy stadium will. Now, the Vegas Raiders are going to get primetime games. The Vegas Raiders are going to get a prettier stadium to look at. So it's going to influence and increase overall TV rights, and I'm going to get more money. That's how they thought of it. That might be the most cynical way to look at the idea of sports in general, but that's the inevitable truth. What I think everyone should realize, even if you're an Oakland fan, it'll take some time, give the Vegas Raiders a chance. You have a good, solid team. I wouldn't disenfranchise yourself as a Raiders fan if you are one, just because the team is moving. I know that's hard to say, but it's about the fundamental truth. It's difficult to say,
especially knowing
what Raider culture means.
Being from the Bay Area, I have a lot of hardcore Raider friends back home.
I get that.
And I'm curious to know what they're going to do, whether they stick with the team, whether they watch cautiously from afar, or whether they forgive what's been done and they stick with the team.
We probably have some Chargers fans tuning in since we are broadcasting from San Diego. I'd be curious to know what they were doing as well. I mean, I don't know if it's correlative. I don't know if it's going to mirror what the Raiders fans are going to do, because the argument can and should be made that Raiders fans are more proud of their team than Chargers fans ever were. So it'd be interesting to see.
Absolutely. I'd agree with that one. But let us know if you guys are Chargers fans, Raiders fans. Please comment away. Tell us what you think. You sticking with your team? Are you not?
They have one more year in Oakland. Do you think the fan attendance is going to fluctuate?
Do they have one or two? I thought they might have had two.
They might have. Well, they're going to play through.
There's an option for two.
The 2017-2018 season, and then I think they're going to play at the UNLV Stadium.
Okay.
There's an option for two if that NLV Stadium doesn't work out. But do you think the fan attendance is going to go up or down? I mean, do you think? I don't know. That wouldn't be a pretty sight.
It'll be interesting to see. It might go down on the whole, but for potentially, like we saw with the Chargers, a final game, a final game at the O.Co Coliseum could draw out a whole lot of fans.
Yeah, but with the Chargers, at least they didn't give us being San Diego people, a certain warning. They said, no, nobody wants us now. We're just going to go play at the StubHub Arena.
And essentially, they had two final games because they thought they were leaving 2 seasons ago. It didn't happen. They played a whole other season, and then finally.
But now it's like they've announced that it's going to be the Las Vegas Raiders, and then they're going to come back. I want to see how the fervent Raiders fans are going to handle that.
See, it may be expensive now because knowing that it's going to be the final game in Oakland whenever that takes place. If I were a fan of the Raiders, I'd be looking to make it to that game somehow.
Yeah.
But there's no way possible that for the rest of the season I'm giving any of my money to that ownership.
Well, see, for me, I think I'm going to look more forward to seeing that first game of the new Raiders in Vegas than the last game of Oakland.
That's what's going to be interesting to see a couple years down the line, what kind of fan attendance there is, who shows up, and what the atmosphere is like.
Yeah, so before we move on from this, it is 2:50 already. We, obviously this is a big topic that's happening in the world of sports. You and I both love the business side of sports as well. I wanted to ask you, in the last 15 months, there's been three NFL franchises that have moved. The LA Rams, the LA Chargers, and the Vegas Raiders. Who do you think has the best shot at long-term success?
You have to say it's the Raiders right now, the way they're built up. I had them as Super Bowl contenders if Derek Carr hadn't gotten injured at the end of last season.
Mm-hmm.
They're a solid team. They could win their division this year. They could make a deep run in the playoffs. They are the best of the three expansion teams, especially when you look down at LA. And the Rams and Chargers are both in shambles, essentially. It's going to take a major
they both have
overhaul.
new coaches, so we'll see how that...
And it seems like we say this every year with these two franchises, but you hope that eventually they get back on their feet.
We used to say that about the Raiders all the time.
Maybe more the Chargers because I'm a Niner fan and the Rams are in our division.
Yeah.
But you hope to see some competition out of those teams sometime soon. But the Raiders you have to look at as the favorite and to be set up for the future. And right now.
Well, we'll see. I mean, it's an exciting time to be an NFL fan. I think everyone appreciates change because you don't want to be stuck in your ways. And I think that's what's fun about the NFL is that it's always going to be adapting in some sort of way. And we're seeing that in action.
It's tough because I remember when the 49ers made the decision to move out of San Francisco. Now, they only moved down the road.
Yeah.
It's a couple extra minutes.
Well, they're still called the San
It's inconvenient. I don't like it.
They're still called San Francisco.
Yeah, but they're not even in San Francisco. It's I don't know. But I can only imagine what it feels like to have a team just completely taken away from you.
All right, well, moving on to another big major sports event that has happened this last week. We have our Final Four. And if you chose that Final Four, then you are high on something.
I believe there were... on ESPN's website, there were 657, I want to say, perfect Final Fours, as opposed to...
They were all chosen by 8-year-olds.
Something like 6 million Final Fours that did not pick a single team.
Wow.
And I'm included in that 6 million.
Yeah,
the first time ever that I have not had
North Carolina,
one of my teams get into the Final Four. No, I had UCLA.
Yeah, that's right. And I had Kentucky. So, that game was good. Let's start there.
Both of those games were good. The UCLA-Kentucky game as well as the UNC-Kentucky game.
You know, a lot of people hate Kentucky, and now a lot of people hate UCLA because of LeVar Ball, which we'll get into later in the show. Who were you rooting for in that game? Were you rooting for UCLA because you had them in the bracket, or were you rooting for Kentucky?
I was rooting for UCLA, if you could say that, because I picked them in my bracket,
Mm-hmm.
but at the end of the day, Kentucky was still a great team, and I was happy with either outcome of that game. I thought Kentucky, the way they looked, probably wound up being a better matchup for UNC.
Yeah.
And sure enough, that matchup provided us with a fantastic game and a fantastic ending, which is hard to beat.
Yeah, moving into that game, do you think the right team won? Do you think the best team won?
I think so at the end of the day. UNC...
They were ranked number one for a reason, I guess.
Yeah, I would make that argument, and they have a whole lot of talent. And what I said from the beginning of the tournament was I always place value on teams with experience. Now, you always get a couple surprises, teams here and there that are young and make deep runs in the tournament, but when looking at my bracket, I always value experience.
Yeah,
so looking at a UNC team that is battle-tested, returning most of their players from last season's championship team, I like the fact that if they could keep it close down the stretch, they would have the physical and mental toughness to push the game all the way to the end and make that decisive play that would get them the W.
And I think, the biggest experience factor of all, Roy Williams. He's a proven battle-tested coach as good as they come, I think. Moving on, so we have North Carolina, the only number one seed in that division. I wanted to talk really quickly about Oregon, which is also, granted they were a 3 seed, still a big surprise, I would say.
Yeah, not something anyone expected, really, especially after their game against Michigan. They seemingly gave Michigan every chance to stay in that game, to possibly upset them. They wind up squeezing it out, and they come up against the big boys, number one, Kansas, And everyone, myself included, is expecting this game to be a blowout because Kansas has won all their games by about 30, 40 points.
Yeah, and a lot of people had them picked as the best team.
And Oregon just dominated them.
Yeah,
there's no other word for it.
I have nothing to say. I was big on the Kansas Jayhawks, as were you. I mean, you're an actual fan of them.
I'm a big fan of the Jayhawks, and to see them go out like that was demoralizing.
And there's a lot of Kansas fans all over the nation. I don't think any of them, had them losing to Oregon. I think they were more worried down the road against a Gonzaga or North Carolina.
Absolutely. Now, that's our first matchup in the Final Four, UNC and Oregon. Who do you see making it to that championship game?
Well, my thing is, when you get down to the Final Four, the upsets tend to lessen. They're not. I guess you can't really consider anything an upset when you're in the Final Four. Obviously, Oregon getting to this point has proven themselves as a good team, but you got to look at North Carolina. I mean, they're proven, they're experienced, as you mentioned, they're battle tested. They just came off a Kentucky win, which could be their only knock against them because they might be mentally and physically exhausted from playing that very hard-fought game. That being said, I think I got to pick North Carolina in this one.
I'm going to agree with you on that one. Simply, I just explained it. Experience.
Yep.
They've been here before. Yep. They've played the better opposition to get here. I mean, Oregon did play Kansas, a pretty strong squad, but clearly didn't play up to par. Mm-hmm. So I think, it's a good game, but ultimately UNC wins.
Moving on to the other side, coming out of the West, a lot of people going into this knew that Gonzaga was a number 1 overall seed, but a lot of people didn't realize that they were good enough to really make it to the Final Four. Fairly easy route, I would say, beating South Dakota State, Northwestern, West Virginia, and then Xavier. So, respectively, those seeds I think were 6, 8, 4, and 11. So not really truly tested yet, and there you have it. They're going to be playing a pretty easy team in the Final Four, which we'll get to in a second. What do you think of this Gonzaga team? Do you think they have what it takes to go all the way?
See, I've made it clear since the beginning of this tournament that I was not high on Gonzaga. I didn't like them to win the tournament. They're probably a top 10 team in the country, but I didn't see them.
Not a top 4?
I didn't see them as a top 4, a top 5, just because they haven't faced the kind of opposition that others have played. And you look at their route to get there, okay, the 16 seed game, South Dakota State is a gimme. Of course they're going to win that game. You go back to their Northwestern game, an 8 seed, a lot of controversy that people have already forgotten about. If that goaltending play goes against Gonzaga, then maybe Northwestern actually beats them, and we're not even talking about them at this point.
That's the craziness of the tournament.
So you get past that, you move on to West Virginia, which was probably one of their best tests of the entire season, regular season included. And
West Virginia is nothing to be messed with.
It was a good game. Gonzaga was in it the whole time. Obviously, they won by 3. But West Virginia made a lot of mental mistakes down the stretch that if they don't have those slip-ups, they win easily. And the obvious one you get to is they didn't even get off a good final shot. They had 17 seconds, and they couldn't even muster up a decent shot.
Well, is that more a testament to how well Gonzaga was playing on the D side, or was that...
I think Gonzaga played good defense, but still, a college-level team that good, West Virginia, you got to get that shot. And then moving on further down the line, Florida State, and most notably beating Arizona, who was a great team. But this is one of those moments where you have a low seed that just runs out of steam at the end. Gonzaga was clearly the better team in this instance, and Xavier didn't have enough momentum.
Yeah, a lot of people were cheering for the X
to get them over the top. It wasn't a good matchup for Xavier. So there you have it. Gonzaga's in the Final Four. I don't think they probably would have gotten there if they played in one of the 3 other sides of the bracket. But that's how March Madness works.
Yeah, and moving on to the team they will face, not a lot of people had this one going in. South Carolina, they were actually a 300-1 favorite to make the Final Four. So if you placed that bet at the beginning of the season, you're an idiot. But clearly it paid off. You're crazy. You're not an idiot, clearly.
And this has probably been one of the most exciting teams, one of the coolest stories of the entire tournament. Obviously, when you have such a low seed,
you're all
South Carolina being a 7 in the Final Four, that's pretty awesome.
Yeah, it is.
That being said, I am all in on them because I just haven't been a huge fan of Gonzaga. This is probably more the fan in me coming out because I haven't examined what this matchup is going to look like in terms of particular players. But taking a look at South Carolina's path to the Final Four, first game, they play a good Marquette team.
I was going to say that. I mean, their first test was not a gimme.
They blow them out by almost 20 points. 20 points exactly.
Yeah.
Next, they take on Duke. Everybody's written them off already. Duke was a national championship contender.
Yeah, I think I wrote them off against Marquette. So
They take on Duke, take down the big boys. Next, you get the 3-seed Baylor, who, some might argue isn't the best 3-seed out there, but still a solid top 25 team coming out of the Big 12.
Yep.
Second to Kansas. They take them down with ease, again, by 20 points. You get to the Elite Eight, take on a Florida team, a 4-seed that was surprisingly strong. Not a lot of people expected. They edged out Wisconsin with that dramatic 3-pointer to win the game in overtime. And this was a fun game to watch. South Carolina, Florida, these teams battled until the very end.
I was rooting for Florida.
But again, the mental capacity of South Carolina to roll with the punches. They were down by a lot at halftime. And to clean up their act, not make mistakes, and just believe in themselves all the way down the stretch was incredible to watch. And I'm really glad that they wound up edging out Florida, even though Florida was a great team.
I literally bet against the Gamecocks in every game. Marquette, Duke, Baylor, Florida. And they've proved me wrong. So I think they have the momentum, and they've proved me wrong in the sense that, they've made it this far. Do you think that's enough to beat a Gonzaga team who they will face in the Final Four?
I think South Carolina might have to reach down and give their best performance yet in order to beat this Gonzaga team.
And don't you think they got to run out of steam at some point?
You think that, but I've thought that every step of the way, and yet here we are.
True.
And especially playing as inspired as the Gamecocks are behind their star player, Sindarius Thornwell. Great name, by the way. Love that name. They look like a force to be reckoned with.
Sure.
Not to mention, this is their first Final Four appearance ever in school history on the men's side, so they're in search of making more history.
They're not even one of the teams that guarantees that a make in the tournament every year, so a lot to be said there.
Pretty cool note about South Carolina this year, though. They have both their men's and women's team represented in their respective Final Fours.
I would imagine their women's team is higher ranked.
Their women's team is a number 1 seed, taking on Stanford, a number 2 seed in the Final Four in a couple days.
Cool. Looking a quick snapshot at the Final Four as a whole, we got 2 teams from the PNW represented, and 2 of the Carolina teams, both the Carolina teams. So very regional matchups.
Absolutely.
So who do you got in that South Carolina Gonzaga game, Biggs?
I'm going Gamecocks. It's time to jump on the bandwagon.
I'm going to stop betting against Gonzaga because I was betting against them as well. I got to stick with the Gonzaga Bulldogs. I think that they were number 1 overall during the regular season for quite a while, so clearly they have something going for them. This could be their one not so shiny moment to crash out and burn, but I got to stick with Gonzaga versus North Carolina in the Final Four championship game.
All right, I'm going same thing. Not same thing. Battle of the Carolinas, South Carolina, North Carolina.
And then who do you got winning that one?
For the championship. Ultimately, I think UNC probably pulls it out. Again, I think they've shown that they are the best team in the tournament with the games that they've played so far. I think that continues on, although I'll be rooting hard for South Carolina, especially if they make it to the championship, because what a story that would be.
Well, that game will be played Monday night, and we will have our recap show on Tuesday covering everything that you need to know about the Final Four. Should be a fun one in Glendale, Arizona.
Absolutely. And now, really quickly, of these Sweet 16, these Elite 8 matchups, who has been the standout player to you in the last couple rounds? A potential MVP of the tournament, maybe?
Well, Sindarius Thornwell is a name that you got to throw around. I think it's Josh Jackson from North Carolina. I think he's played good ball. I believe that's his name.
I believe Josh Jackson plays for Kansas.
Was it Kansas? Who am I thinking of for North Carolina? 44.
Justin
Jackson. I think he's been playing good ball. He hit a lot of good threes when they needed to be hit. Plays great on the defensive side of the ball. Definitely a solid player, Justin Jackson. He's someone to be looked out for.
He had 19 points against Kentucky.
Yep.
So,
and he played. I think he played like 38 out of the 40 minutes or something.
Oh, yeah, he played a lot.
He played a lot of the game. So I hope he's not too exhausted going into the Final Four. But
one player that also I think goes under the radar a lot, that has been an integral part of what UNC has done this season, is Kennedy Meeks. Not often talked about, one of their big men, but he actually had a career high of 17 rebounds.
Wow.
Against Kentucky, which when you're getting that many boards for your team, that's going to make a huge difference in the game. So while he might not be the MVP of the tournament, if UNC does go on to win the championship, he can be looked at as a big reason why they were able to accomplish such a feat.
Well, I'd have to look out for him. You know, the thing about Gonzaga is I can't name a single player on their team. I think that says a lot about their team mentality and their coachability and the coach itself.
Even though Nigel Williams-Goss is one of the top 5 finalists for the Wooden Award.
Is he? Well, see, look.
Those finalists came out this week.
Okay, well, I think, Gonzaga is a team that a lot of people don't know about around the U.S. Even this year, a lot of people bet against them for a reason. You know, a lot of us like to stick to experience. They like to stick to big brands. I mean, a lot of people were rooting for the Dukes, the Kentuckys, the North Carolinas, not so much a small team from Spokane, from the West Coast Conference.
And speaking of Wooden Award finalists, here they are, as announced this week. You have Lonzo Ball, guard at UCLA. Most people will know him. Josh Hart, guard, senior from Villanova. Frank Mason III, another guard, senior at Kansas.
He's a good player.
Caleb Swanigan, a sophomore forward from Purdue, and Nigel Williams-Goss, the junior guard out of Gonzaga. So we have our finalists. Who are you thinking for this award, Kay, if it were up to you?
Well, you know, Kansas, if they would have been in the Final Four right now, I would put Frank Mason III as the clear-cut favorite. I don't want to lean Lonzo Ball. I don't think the Wooden Award typically doesn't go to a player like him who's a more one-and-done candidate who, you know, as soon as the game was over, literally said he's moving on to the NBA. Great player, obviously. I'm still going to lean Frank Mason III because I think he played a great season of basketball. You know, it's going to be interesting. I don't think it's a clear-cut winner, but I got to lead. I'm going to lean to him.
I would love to see Frank Mason III win the award, although I think especially if Gonzaga gets to the national championship or if the Zags manage to win that game, Nigel Williams-Goss would have a pretty strong argument for winning that award.
So he's the only Final Four team in there.
For what he's done for Gonzaga this year. Yes, he is the only Final Four team. Villanova was a 1 seed that crashed out in the second round of Wisconsin. Kansas lost to Oregon this last weekend, and UCLA lost to Kentucky. Obviously, Purdue lost earlier on in the tournament as well, but they weren't expected to go as far.
Yeah, well, so we have the Final Four. We have the Wooden finalists. You guys are tuning into our show. Comments away. Who do you think is going to win the whole thing? Do you have any, fun stories that you might have seen when you were out watching the Final Four at any of the sports bars around the world? Just comments away. Let's hear it. But I do want to talk real quick about the women's tournament, which has been fun and interesting. But I think as it usually is every year, has had a lack of parity, and I say that because of UConn and their continued dominance, as it has been for the last 5 years. They are again in the Final Four this year. I believe they are playing before the men's national team in Dallas. If I'm right about that. They will be facing Mississippi State. UConn will, and on the other side of the ball, we have Stanford going against South Carolina, like you had mentioned earlier in the show, a repeat, men's and women's.
Yeah, I did a little better in my women's bracket than I did in my men's bracket, getting 3 out of the 4 Final Four team. UConn's a gimme.
Yeah, if you didn't pick UConn, then.
But no, we haven't talked about the women's tournament as much this year, especially because, like you mentioned, Kay, there has not been a lot of parity. The last couple of years, UConn is just wiping the floor with everybody. That being said, there were some interesting runs. The number 10 seed Oregon out of the Bridgeport side of the bracket went on to defeat Temple. The 7 seed defeat Duke. Again,
wow.
Duke 2 seed losing in the second round.
My goodness.
Beating 3 seeded Maryland before finally falling to UConn by about 38 points, which is pretty amazing.
It looked like that Stanford Notre Dame game on the other side was an interesting one.
Came down to one final block by a Stanford player. So that was a pretty good game. The South Carolina FSU game was also close up until the very end, down in the Stockton section. And then the Mississippi State Baylor game was actually great. For the life of me, I'm sorry I can't remember the Mississippi State player's name, but she had an incredible game, scored 41 points in memory of her father. I think it was the anniversary of his passing from a couple years ago. Used that as inspiration to propel her team over number 1 seeded Baylor. So that was a pretty cool story.
One of the things I wanted to ask you, so a lot of people, if you're a sports fan, general or otherwise, you have heard of UConn's run, and if you haven't, you definitely should. It's probably the best run in sports history. I mean, I would definitely put it up there. I don't know how many games they've won in a row, but it's over 100, and that's a ridiculous number. Do you think this might be an interesting question to phrase because I want to get it right? Do you think that run is good or bad for women's basketball?
I think it's a little bit of both because it's an incredible feat what UConn have managed to do, but the tournament's no fun because they're going to win.
The regular season's no fun either.
And that's the difficult thing that we've seen with basketball recently, not on the men's side, but in the NBA. As we'll get to a little bit later in the show, as it's become so predictable. Although in the NBA, maybe we might be starting to see a little bit of a change in that. But that's for a little bit later down the road. But with that, we will wrap up our tournament talk. Just a reminder for those of you tuning in, those of you who normally watch on my Facebook live feed, I hope you've seen my comment that I put on my failed feed. It gave out today. I'm sorry. You can watch through Kay's feed over on the other side of the room. It's just as good, I promise. But still, continue to comment away. We'd love to hear any of your opinions on whatever we talked about today. It was a lot of fun interacting with you guys, so keep it coming.
Most certainly. And we are still live on Instagram and Periscope via Twitter. So thank you so much.
The last word we'll say on college basketball today is let's talk about LeVar Ball a little bit.
I almost don't want to because it's going to give him more credit than he already deserves, but I think he's worth talking about because we need to all realize that he is a horrible person.
This is probably the last time we will talk about him on the show. Now that UCLA is out, Lonzo is going to be heading into the draft. I'm sure we'll hear more from him in the future, but this is the last bit of coverage that we will give him. Just to say that neither of us are fans. And, there are some stronger words that we could use towards him, but I believe we alluded to it last week. He's just using his kids for his own personal gain and marketing. And credit to Lonzo for taking it all in stride and kind of ignoring what his dad has to say. But, man, I would not be happy if that were my dad.
There's a line And I think it's clear, not blurry. And I say that because the line right now is you want to be supportive of your sons. You want to give them, your sons or daughters, you want to give them the fire under them to make them succeed, to kind of make sure that they're going to be the best player or student or business person, for example, that they could be. That line is crossed when you start insulting other people, other people's kids, other people's successes. And I think that line is also crossed when you use the value of what your kids have accomplished for monetary gain. And we've seen all of those things in LeVar Ball, and he still seems to keep coming at it as if he's in the right. And I'm worried that it's going to affect his sons, who are very talented players. It's going to affect their draft stock because no one wants, LeVar hanging around outside the locker room saying that.
Talking about he could take the whole team on.
Yeah. It was, for example, I don't know, Popovich's fault. It was Doc Rivers' fault. It was LeBron's fault. Wherever he ends up. He's not going to end up on any of those teams, but you get what I'm saying.
Yeah, and it's just terrible to see because it's messing with the image of a young man who's done so well for himself in this last year. And he's going to go to a great team regardless of what his father's been saying. But it just creates such a huge distraction, and it's so unnecessary, and you get tired of it. He's out on air arguing with Stephen A. Smith, and,
I mean, that is theatrics. As soon as the cameras shut off, they straighten their ties and have lunch together, I'm sure. But the fact that he's getting that platform is a problem, and the fact that he has the platform because of his sons is a bigger problem. There's one thing if J.R. Smith wants to be a little eccentric and party and whatnot. He has the talent, the recognition, and the persona to back it up. J.R. Smith is not representing his kids, or his kids are not representing J.R. Smith, for example. It's horrible. It's demeaning to players that have worked hard. And I think what's really bad about this is now that UCLA crashed out at the Sweet 16, Lonzo is going to be the number 2 pick, and he's going to most likely end up at the Los Angeles Lakers, who are not a quiet franchise. I mean, this isn't the Utah Jazz we're talking about. He's going to have a platform, and that's a problem.
It really is. And maybe the most disgusting thing that I heard from LeVar Ball in the last week of all this newfound media coverage that he's gained is he was on Stephen A's show talking about, he was on there before
was he on First Take?
UCLA played, I believe he was on First Take.
Okay.
Before UCLA played Kentucky. And he was talking about, if Lonzo loses, I still got 2 shots at this, alluding to his 2 other sons.
Right?
And sure enough, afterwards, they came back on the show once UCLA had lost. And again, he said, it doesn't matter. I've got 2 shots at this.
Right.
And if that doesn't rub you the wrong way, then I don't know what will. Because he's taking advantage of what his incredibly talented and hardworking sons have done and essentially saying, okay, Lonzo, I've used you for what I need right now. Go make me a lot of money in the NBA. Pardon me while I go take advantage of your 2 other brothers and go make their lives a living nightmare as well.
Those 2 other brothers, that of which one of them has had a 91-point game, both of which have already been signed to UCLA.
And both, I know LiAngelo is committed there. He's a senior in high school. He's heading to UCLA next year. And then LaMelo is the standout that we've seen all the Bleacher Report and social media.
Both of them have verbal agreements. And I wonder and worry that UCLA, who is a public university, will say, you know what, it's a little too much for us. We're going to revoke. It's just a verbal agreement. I mean, they can revoke it at any time. And I'm worried that they say, we don't want to deal with your annoying father. We think you're talented, but we just don't want to deal with it right now. Sorry. And I hope it doesn't get to that point just for talent's sake, for LaMelo and LiAngelo's sake.
And with that is the last you will hear of LeVar Ball on our show.
That's right. Unless he, yells at LeBron. No, we're not going to talk about him. We can't give him the platform.
We'll reevaluate later on
if
he does something extremely dramatic that we feel the need to discuss.
That's right. The next thing I want to jump right into is heading back into the NFL. We talked at the beginning of the show about the Vegas Raiders, but as the NFL is a 365-day league, there's always stories to be talked about. The first thing I actually want to talk about is I want to go with Big Ben here before we go into anything else. So Mike Tomlin announced today that they're going to continue with their game planning and playbooking for the offseason in the hopes and thoughts that Big Ben will still be their quarterback. But Big Ben has not come out and said anything. Now, we've seen players retire younger and younger with new studies coming out about maybe the connections between CTE scans and the damages of football. Do you think Big Ben stays or goes?
I think he stays. All that science and whatnot, although it's important and players are taking it into account.
Sure.
Nowadays, if Big Ben's going to have problems, he's long past the point of no return. He's deep in it. He's a NFL guy through and through, and he's going to stick it out until his legs don't work anymore.
Yeah, I mean okay, so that's a fair point. I agree with you there. But then why did he come out and say earlier in the season that, I don't know, I might not play? Do you think it's for marketability? Do you think it's for general interest? I mean,
I think it's honestly what every older, if you want to call it that, quarterback goes through when they finish up another NFL season. He's 37?
He's old. I think he's that Tony Romo class.
Okay, well he's in his at least mid-30s, and you get to that point where you're like, okay, my body is starting to give out. Maybe it's time to hang it up. I don't know. You say something out in the media, it gets blown up into this whole big thing, and he'll be back next year. So, well, I wouldn't read too much into it.
Yeah, it'd be interesting to see if if the Steelers take it seriously and maybe draft a quarterback late or maybe third, fourth rounder. Not much to say about Big Ben. I do want to note that it is interesting that Tomlin came out and just said, hey, we're going to play as if he's going to be there. We're going to play book and game plan as if he's going to be there. Going on to another far less talented quarterback, Colin Kaepernick.
Yeah, in the news again because he's still looking for a team, unsurprisingly. And
as I don't want to veer off of the topic so much, but as is Jay Cutler, we don't really hear him in the news that much.
Exactly. And, there's been a couple things tossed around from both sides of the aisle in terms of what people think of Colin Kaepernick. You have one side saying he's being blackballed by the NFL. They just don't want him around. They don't want him as an issue. He created problems for them this last season. And
especially as a backup, I guess.
The NFL is scaring off GMs, and even there was talk about the President of the United States, Donald Trump, scaring GMs off, saying that he will make their life miserable, tweeting at them about Colin Kaepernick. So you have that side of the aisle, and then you have the other side saying essentially the fact of the matter is that Colin Kaepernick's just not good enough, and NFL GMs are realizing that. And they don't want a distraction out of their backup quarterback. Now, I tend to find myself a little bit in the middle in that I think, having been a Niner fan for the last year, I dealt with this situation.
Sure.
And where I think it's true that there is probably some blackballing going on, and as an NFL GM, I sure as heck wouldn't want the President of the United States tweeting at me every day about my quarterback and whatnot. I still think he's just not good enough to be a starting quarterback in the NFL. And to that other point, being that NFL teams don't want a distraction at their backup quarterback. And that was my original beef with Kaepernick, was that I understand things in this country have gotten worse in the last couple of years, but he had such a great platform, even right before this last year, to make some noise if he wanted to and be a leader in the community. And we didn't see any of that until he lost his starting quarterback job, which just kind of rubbed me the wrong way a little bit. Again, backup quarterback making noise, being a distraction for the team. I understand it's an important cause. We've talked about this on the show before, and I'm completely behind what Kaepernick stands for. I didn't agree with the way he went about it, kneeling for the national anthem, but that's a discussion for another day.
Mm-hmm.
I agreed with the injustices he was trying to point out, but where was that concern before? To give the guy some credit, he's done a lot, and he's backed his words up in the last year. He's donated so much to charity. But when you look at it from a purely football aspect, not a lot of teams want that distraction in the first place, and you have this added effect of what's everyone else going to say, and what are our fans going to think if we sign this?
To boil it down simply, you just run a cost-benefit analysis. He's not his words and distraction, as you mentioned, the President of the United States getting involved, it's not worth his talent, which is a backup talent. And nobody wants any controversy from a backup. I mean, I can't name every backup in the league right now, but for example, Matt Castle's a backup. You don't know anything about him. That's what you want. Josh McCown, same way. You don't want to know anything about him.
Tony Romo was essentially a backup this season when he came back, and although he was such a big part of that franchise, that's just another distraction every week in the media.
That's why he's going to be that's why he's going to be a starting quarterback next season.
Exactly.
He's prodigiously talented, which I wanted to get into. My next question had to do with Tony Romo. So originally, this sort of fate of Romo had to do with the Texans or the Broncos. Two good teams looking for the right piece, but now the true battle seems to be between the Texans and Broncos and CBS and Fox. So they are both courting Tony Romo. I mean, he's a good-looking guy. He's well-spoken. He knows the game. Do you think that's the right move for him, or do you think he should continue playing?
I think it could be a good move for him eventually. I really had never entertained the idea of seeing Tony Romo on TV as an analyst.
Rex Ryan's there.
Just because I didn't think he was close to retiring yet, and that kind of leads into my point of I think he still has plenty left in the tank.
I think so.
And again, I think he winds up in Houston with the Texans, a couple more years maybe, and then calls it quits, potentially gets up in the broadcast booth.
I would say, yeah. I mean, I don't know if I think he could do better in the studio, but I think he plays for the Texans this year. If he gets hurt this year, he'll retire. If he doesn't and they have a good season, go 9-7, 10-6, he'll come back. He's got a lot left in the tank, I think, and as long as he stays healthy, the Texans have a good team for him to work around. I don't want to see him in the booth yet, to be honest, or the studio. I think it's just unfair for him. I mean, he's never come out and said anything bad about Dak Prescott. It's not Dak's fault that he was so good. And I respect Tony Romo in a lot of ways. So going off of that, I think it's fair that the media has let up on Tony and said, we want you to get another shot. You're a good quarterback. And, I mean, honestly, if Romo was under the pocket, under center last season, with that O-line, with that running back, I think they could have even won the Super Bowl. Dak's great. But, I think Tony deserves another shot. I think you agree with me.
Absolutely. Everything you said, I think he winds up getting another shot. He deserves another shot. He's good enough to get another shot, and it's going to be good for him. He's going to reinvent himself a little bit later on in his career, maybe make a run at the playoffs and potentially go a little deeper. And then, a couple years from now, we see him make that transition into the media.
Absolutely. I would like to. It is already 3:30. We spent a lot of time talking about the tournament and the Vegas Raiders, as we should have. I mean, big news. But I do want to get to a very important topic, which is the shakeup in the NBA. Really quickly, I want to talk about this because it's important and it's going to go under the radar. As you mentioned or alluded to earlier in the show, the NBA has faced a lack of parity, and we've said that on this show a lot of times. But now, without a lot of people knowing, Boston is in the lead for the East. It's no longer the Cavs. The Cavs lost an abysmal game yesterday to the San Antonio Spurs, and now it looks like Boston has the number 1 spot with 12 games left to go. I mean, what are your initial thoughts to that reaction?
Wow, first of all,
Yeah.
because we've talked all season about how the NBA was predictable and we didn't think this would happen. And here we are.
Sure.
Secondly, that's awesome because I don't like the Cavs and I would love to see them, although I would like to see them in the finals again so that we could beat LeBron, we being the Golden State Warriors. I also would love to see them crash out of the playoffs earlier than that because I think it'd be an easier matchup for us in the finals with whoever else we could get. So I don't know if this stands until the end of the season. I don't know if Boston can go 12 for 12 down the stretch.
And not much left in the season.
That might be what it takes to edge out the Cavs.
Well, this is the important thing that I brought up in the pre-show. If you look at the 5, 6, 7, and 5, 6, and 7 seeds, they're all tied right now with the standing of 37 and 36. And the 8th seed is the Miami Heat at 35 and 38, not far off. So, does it really matter?
And you have the Chicago Bulls at 35 and 39 in the 9 spot.
Yeah, but they're
Pistons at 34 and 40, and the Hornets at 33 and 40.
I would be
surprised. That's 11 teams. The teams lower on that list might not make it in, but they're close.
There is parity lower down, and now actually there's parity up at the top as well. But my question is, does it really matter if the Cavaliers don't make the number 1 spot? I mean, they would lose home field advantage or home court advantage, but does it really matter?
It makes a little bit of a difference in that they might have to play a couple more games in order to get back to the finals, because you look at, they would probably get a 7 seed, which right now is the Pacers. Not a bad team that's given them trouble.
Not a good team.
But given them trouble in the past.
Sure.
Say they even get past the Pacers pretty easily, then you run into higher seeded teams, and theoretically they could wind up playing the Wizards at some point, which
that's true. Going down the line
would be a higher seed that they'd have to face. The Wizards could easily take, even if they don't win, take 2 games off the Cavs, which may not seem like a lot, but last year when the Cavs won nearly every game getting to the finals, they got a lot more rest than, say, if they had lost 5 games down the stretch.
And that's why I picked them to win that year, last year. So it's a good point. I think they've started their rest season early now, with LeBron resting at some games. Kevin Love has rested a lot. I think that the mentality is different. I think it's all about those 7 or 6 games in June and July. So I think going into it in that mindset, it's a little different. But obviously, nobody wants to not be the number 1 seed. But I think the same sort of shakeup is happening on the other side of the ball in the Western Conference. I believe the Golden State Warriors and San Antonio Spurs have been switching that number 1 spot for quite a while. I don't know what the rankings are there, but they've been trading spots for a little bit. They're both on win streaks of a certain amount. I think the Warriors end up winning that one, though.
Warriors on a 7-game win streak. Spurs won their last 5. Warriors are 2 games up on the Spurs in the West. I think they hold on to that lead. There was a moment there where I got a little nervous, but I think
and then Kevin Durant's going to come back anyway. So
yeah, the Warriors will wrap up that number 1 seed and get an interesting matchup in the Trailblazers in the first round.
Yeah, no, it'll be fun. I think the NBA playoffs are going to be better this year than they have been in the last few years, especially now that it's this last-minute shakeup.
And especially in the West, because the East, there are a lot of teams that are close to each other in terms of record, but still, the quality of the top 3 is vastly different from the quality of the next 5 teams. Whereas in the Western Conference, the Trailblazers, as good as the Warriors are, could easily take 2 games off of them.
Yeah, if the Trailblazers were in the
East,
an 8 seed. The Trailblazers were in the East, they'd be like a 4 seed, I think. I mean, they'd be really good.
They would, I think. So, especially in the Western Conference, it's going to be fun to watch. Potential, as it stands, Rockets-Thunder matchup, round 1.
That'll be fun.
Harden and Westbrook,
Russ,
the 2 MVP candidates. Kobe Bryant coming out this weekend saying that there should be co-MVPs. Because compare the seasons they're having. I don't. It's a weird concept, but
well, they announced the MVP after the first round of the playoffs. So if that holds up, I mean those last minute votes
wins.
Yeah, I could be wrong on that. I mean, maybe there's a break. If you guys are listening out there and want to correct me, please do. That's the idea of this interactive show. But I'm going to lean Harden on that MVP race. Real quickly, what is your thought on that, and then we'll move on.
I'm leaning Russell Westbrook on that one. I want to give it to Harden, but 37, 38 triple-doubles? That's unheard of. What's the all-time record? 41? Oscar Robertson?
Oh, I think he's already beaten the record.
I don't know that he's beaten the best record out there yet.
Or maybe he beat the streak.
I think he beat the streak, but I will look it up. But for that reason, I'm going Westbrook, because we've never seen anyone do that.
I've said this a lot of times on this show. The down the stretch mentality of the NBA is huge, and I think it's going to matter hugely in this season. Now on both sides of the court, we kept saying Cavs, but the Celtics are on top, so can't have a fair argument there.
They are. So we'll keep tabs on the NBA for you guys. That's all we really had for today. Not a ton going on. Next week we might preview potentially our picks for Coach of the Year, an interesting award, every time it comes around. But we really wanted to get to some soccer today. We might not get through everything that we have to say, but there's a lot going on.
Where do you want to start? We'll let you start.
How about we talk about the U.S. men's national team? Because that's probably most pertinent to our viewers out there, coming off their 6-0 win against Honduras in the hexagonal World Cup playoff in CONCACAF. Great win for the team. Clint Dempsey is back, scores a hat trick. Christian Pulisic looks fantastic, and everyone's heaping praise on Bruce Arena. But why?
I think when Arena got hired, we both said that he would either reap the benefits of Klinsmann or he would transform the progressive system of Klinsmann into the most regressive soccer that we would be facing. And when you and I went to the Q to watch the USA take on Panama?
Back at the beginning of the year?
Yeah.
Serbia,
yeah. See, we saw Bruce Arena's first game, and we both decided, you know what, it's not going to come to fruition. It was a horrible 0-0 game. They come back, win.
Benefit of the doubt, the players were just coming off their off-season, getting back into shape. I didn't expect a whole lot. I was hoping to see some goals, but I didn't hold that first game against Arena necessarily. That being said, now he's getting all this acclaim and attention and praise for a system that Jurgen Klinsmann put in place. And U.S. soccer is where they're at right now because of a man named Jurgen Klinsmann.
I agree. So going back to Bruce Arena, I never thought he was the guy for the job, and no one at this point should praise him. I've always said that Klinsmann was always the right guy for the job, but you would have to have given him one more year for all of that to come through, especially with Pulisic on the rise, another couple key players on the rise. It will be interesting to see how Arena handles Michael Bradley going forward. Should he still be the captain? Should he still even be in the starting lineup? I think we differ on that. I think he's good enough to play. He might not be the captain per se, but it's going to be interesting to see how Arena handles that.
I think he'd do great in a bench role, mentoring some younger players. I don't see the need to take him off the national team, but I don't know that he's a starter anymore in my mind. But going beyond just the national team as it stands right now, looking further into American soccer, you have this week a top executive with Schalke Football Club in the German league coming out and saying foreign clubs are looking more and more at U.S. players to go out and sign because the U.S. youth system has gotten so much better. It's still not where it needs to be compared to its European counterparts.
Sure.
But teams like Borussia Dortmund, in the case of Christian Pulisic, are looking to the U.S. to get some of these well-formed players to bring them over and give them a little finesse and hash out the details, the specifics, and make them into complete players. And a lot of that is due to, again, Jurgen Klinsmann, who made so much noise when he was hired about how the whole system in the U.S. had to be revamped if they wanted to be prominent on a world stage. And sure enough, here we are a couple of years later, and his words are paying off.
I think Sunil Gulati, who is the president of the U.S. Soccer Federation, jumped the gun a bit too much. Obviously, the World Cup qualifying of the United States was in peril, especially if they didn't win this game this last weekend. Of course, they did win it. But, what I'm trying to say is Gulati realized that if you want to even make the World Cup in the first place, then maybe there's a change necessary. I think he should have stuck to Klinsmann. I think you agree there. And I think the benefits are being shown, as we have continuously mentioned.
And I'd love to see how Arena fares down the stretch when, we're going to see what he's like as a coach when this team goes through a lull and when they're struggling. And can he pull them out of that rut? Because right now,
they got to make
the MLS season is starting for players playing in the U.S. European players have been going through their respective leagues for a while now. They've got a lot of energy. It's exciting. In the case of the Honduras game, Clint Dempsey, your captain for so long, is back. And they've had so many reasons to be energetic and they want to get back on track in the World Cup qualifiers. But when that fades away, when the glitz and glamour starts to fade a little bit, and we see the U.S. get battle tested in the latter stages of this qualification process, that's when we're going to make the decision on who Bruce Arena is as a coach.
And don't get me wrong. I don't think Bruce Arena has to really prove himself, because he's been in this situation before. He's taken the Galaxy really far. I have made the argument. I think you agree with me. He's just not the right man for the job right now. No one's questioning his coachability skill, his coaching skills. No one's questioning his management skills as a whole. I think he's proven himself.
I think there's better out there.
I think
he's
I
a
agree.
Great manager.
I don't think he's the best position. He's great for the LA Galaxy. He was. I just don't think he's the right man for this job at this critical turning point, this Bildungsroman for the United States men's national team. We still feel the highs of 2010 South Africa, when we had Landon Donovan, we had Clint Dempsey on the rise, we had Tim Howard back there. And obviously we've been in a slump after the most recent World Cup. You're right, it's going to be how they handle it in the lull, but at this turning point for U.S. soccer, we need a man like Klinsmann and not Arena. Very
true. I'd agree with you on that one.
It is 3:44. You are listening to Bix and K. We're going to continue with some soccer talk. Thanks for tuning in, guys. What else you got for me, man?
One thing I wanted to ask you about, Kay, is video replay. Now, this hasn't been something that's super prominent in soccer. We've had goal line technology instituted the last couple of years, which has been great for the sport. I think you and I would both agree.
Yeah.
But now talk about extending video replay has become more and more prominent, and we really saw that take shape today in the France-Spain international friendly. For those of you who didn't watch the game, it ended in a 2-0 victory to Spain, although it could have just as easily ended 1-1 if video replay had not been around to help. So France had a goal disallowed because rightfully their player was judged to be offsides. Later on in the game, though, when it was still 0-0, Spain was awarded a penalty kick, a spot kick, when it was completely undeserved. It was extremely clearly not a penalty. It shouldn't have been given, and yet replay was not used to make a difference in that situation. Then later on in the game, replay was again used to judge whether or not a Spanish player was offsides when they scored their second goal. He was rightfully judged to be onside, the goal stood, but especially listening to the broadcast today, a lot of what Mr. Taylor Twellman had to say was that video replay is going to be great for the sport. It should be instituted in goal-scoring situations so we make sure we get it right. It's not going to be expanded to every aspect of the game of soccer or football, but I don't understand the reasoning behind not using it in awarding or not awarding a penalty kick, because it's the same argument as is a player offsides or not. It makes a huge difference in the game and essentially could change an outcome, which I would argue it did today.
So there is a sense of subjectivity in what replay can be used for. I think we see that in a lot of sports. We see that in certainly in the NFL, in catching, challenging. What can you challenge? What can't you challenge? And it's happening a certain way. I think the human condition of sports and I would say decision making is something that we don't want to go against the press to set a new precedent against. For example, in the future, if an automated system were to be making decisions for all sorts of sports calls, then it would take out this idea of, I don't want to say parity, but it would take out a lot of why sports is important, of the sense of competition. I agree that the right person should always win at the right time, but the idea of officiating and of regulating is a big part of sports as a whole.
And on a larger scale, I agree with you. I don't think replay should be used in every aspect of the sport, but at least in extremely decisive moments. If it's something that's going to be instituted at all, I think you need to use it for all of these crucial moments. Because if I'm...
if you had to narrow it down to what replay should be used for in soccer, what would they be?
Probably offsides and penalty kicks.
Offsides, goals,
and awarding penalty kicks. Because for the actual ball going into the goal, you have goal line technology. That's not an issue anymore.
And do you think it's like a slippery slope to where after that, okay, so we awarded a penalty kick here, but what if there's a free kick right outside the 18 that we have to go to replay? Maybe a player flopped. Would you say that would set a precedent?
See, that's the difficult part, and that's why I'm probably more against instant replay in soccer. I do love goal line technology, but if you start instituting it with just offsides, it's going to leak into every other aspect of the game. Because if I'm a player out there on the pitch and the team that I'm playing has a player offsides and has a player onsides and they score a goal, but a flag goes up saying it's offsides, the replay is conducted and it's deemed that he was on, the goal is given, but later in the game I'm clearly fouled in the box and everyone and their mother can see it except the guy in the striped shirt standing right next to me, and I don't get a replay for something like that, I'm going to be mad. Because the other guy got the benefit of the doubt on the other end. It's a different kind of call, but they took the time to look at something that was probably less serious, you could argue.
Well,
it's a difficult choice.
We'd love to hear what you guys have to say out there. I know Vix's Facebook is down, but you can comment away on my Facebook, and we can address that maybe at this show or the next. It is certainly an interesting point, and you have to wonder. I mean, this was just an international. I don't know if this was a friendly or a World Cup qualifying game.
It was just a friendly.
Just a friendly. So you have to wonder when, in the future, it's going to go against more decisive games, such as.
And we already see instant replay taking shape. It's due to be instituted next season in the German Second League and the FA Cup.
So it's continuously making its rounds. I mean, it's already instituted in world competition, world tournaments, and the Premier League and La Liga.
Not yet.
No,
it is not in the Premier League. It is not in La Liga. It is not in.
It is in world tournaments. Well, goal line technology.
Goal line technology is
okay. Never mind. That's what I.
But
sorry.
Video replay has not been instituted anywhere yet until next season, when it will be in the two aforementioned leagues, competitions.
Interesting. Well, it is 3:50. You have been listening to Bix and K. Thank you so much for tuning in to another great Tuesday edition of our show. Thanks so much, whoever commented away. And I know Bix's Facebook is down, but we still got some good comments this show.
Yeah, we'll have that up and running for you guys next show. Unfortunately, the Wi-Fi here at school is not the best, so we'll have to sort that one out.
How about we move into some rapid fire for the last about 9 minutes of the show? Let's do it.
Let's do it, Kay. What you got for me?
I want to start out going back to the NBA. So the Raptors have been on a 6-game win streak. I think they might have extended it to 7 last night. And of course, throughout the show this semester, this year, we've said that it doesn't matter whatever happens in the East. Obviously, there's been a shakeup. Boston's in the lead. Taking Boston and Cleveland out of the equation, do you think the Raptors have a significant shot to get to the finals?
I think you have to talk about them as a fairly significant contender. They've been around for the last couple seasons. It'll all depend on those matchups that they get, but either way, if the Cavaliers do regain that top spot, you look at a clash between the Raptors and the Celtics as being taxing for either of those teams.
Mm-hmm.
So if I'm a Raptors fan and I know that we're not going to get that number 1 seed, I'm rooting for the Celtics to take down the Cavs, because that way at least you get a shot at the Cavs earlier on, and if you don't beat them, you tire them out so that the Celtics have a shot to take them down.
Yeah,
I don't know if there's any sort of collusion or well wishes like that in the NBA, but me being someone removed from it, I would be a fan of seeing something like that happen.
We'd have to see what's going to happen, because they are making a surge at the right time. They're not as good a team as they were last year when Kyle Lowry had a breakout season and they had Ed Biombo, and they got rid of a few pieces last year and added a few pieces this year, but not the same team. So it is going to be interesting to see if they have any shot going forward. They did make it to the Eastern Conference Finals last year.
All right, Kay, I want to get your take on a little world soccer. Lionel Messi being handed a 4-game suspension from the Argentinian national team, meaning he will miss out on 4 of the final 5 World Cup qualifiers for his home nation. Again, he was suspended for essentially berating a referee in a qualifying match. What do you make of this suspension?
I think it's way too harsh a punishment. I haven't heard of a 4-game suspension for anything less than like killing a player on the pitch.
Dissent is usually 1 game.
Yeah, I was going to say 1 or 2.
A red card.
Yeah, and 1 game is 4 games out of a 5 crucial one. You have to consider that there's been some sort of collusion against Messi. I don't know why there would be, but there has been. FIFA is not exactly the most ethical organization in the world, and we've seen that play out in the past. 4 games seems incredibly excessive, and do we know what he said?
I don't think we even know exactly what he said.
So there's something smelly. There's something fishy.
You have to think Argentina qualifies for the World Cup anyway, even if
they
weren't there.
They are a very talented team, but Messi
that puts a hit on the Argentinian team, and it'll be more difficult for them to endure that qualifying process without their captain and the best player in the world.
Yeah, and you kind of hit the nail on the head there, but they are going to still qualify, I would say, but it does mess with chemistry. It does mess with a lot of big factors. And I know people in Argentina are all up in arms. I don't think anybody's really blaming Messi all that much. It just shows how bad FIFA's run still. I wanted to talk to you about the MLB really quickly. So we are coming up on the season opener this Sunday. I wanted to ask you more broadly about opening day. How important is it? I mean, you play 158 games, right? How important is opening day? 162. How important is it to get a good start on opening day? Is it more for the culture? Does it affect the real standings of the MLB?
Mentally, you want to have a good start on opening day. You want to get your front foot forward and get that first win under your belt. in the grand scheme of things, like you mentioned, Major League Baseball teams play 162 games. So if you drop the first one, you got 161 more, and it's not the end of the world. But certainly getting that first win, getting your confidence as a team is really important. And it's Christmas in April. I couldn't be more excited. Sunday is opening day, like you mentioned, April 2nd. There are 3 games that night. I don't know exactly which ones they are yet, but check them out for sure on Sunday, opening day, one of the best days of the year. I couldn't be more excited that baseball is back. Get your fantasy teams ready. Get those stat books out. It's going to be a fun season.
And then here in San Diego, the opening season at Petco is April 7th, where they will open a 3-game stint against the Giants, your Giants.
Against my San Francisco Giants. Sticking with baseball for UK, this week we saw Mike Trout put forward an actually interesting plan for umpires that no one else had really thought of before. Mike Trout's well respected. He's widely known as one of the best players in Major League Baseball. But he was thinking that during spring training, in order to get veteran umpires back in the mix again and get them up to speed before opening day, you let them umpire about 6 innings of a spring training game, and then you bring up some of these guys from the minor leagues, other umpires that are officiating in lower leagues, and you let them do the last 3 innings of the game behind the plate so that they get that experience. Because right now there's little to no turnover in Major League umpires, and the guys at the lower levels don't really have a chance to be seen much. So this would give them the opportunity to be seen and give veterans the opportunity to get ready for the season again and get back into the mix of things. Is that something that you like, or is it not something that's going to make a difference?
No, I like it. I mean, I think if you mentioned turnover, that's huge. And I think if there's already a tiered system for other walks of baseball, then or other people in baseball, then why shouldn't it be in the umpires who are more influential than we all think? I think I love that. I love that idea, and I think I believe in other leagues it happens. I think moving into, like, for example, college refereeing, you don't get to just call the USC, UCLA game your first try. You usually start out at a USD game or something of that sort, or even lower. So I think if that tiered system exists in other places, it should exist in a very structured system like Mike Trout is suggesting.
All right.
I think I have one more. We have time for one more question?
We do indeed.
Okay. I wanted to talk about Jason Witten real quick. I wanted to end the show with him. He has signed a 4-year extension going through 2021 for the Dallas Cowboys. Now, he's not a young man.
He is not at all.
I think he's, 36?
He's getting up there.
He's getting up there. Old. And he's not a quarterback. He's not a kicker or a punter. He's a tight end. You got to run. You got to make those routes. Obviously, one of the best tight ends to ever play. But a 4-year extension, that's huge.
I think in the short term, the deal getting done benefits the Cowboys. It benefits Dak Prescott to have that veteran presence that he can rely on in the lineup at tight end. But I don't know why a 4-year deal was necessary, because I don't think he's going to be around in 4 years. The position takes a toll on your body. So long term,
I think Jerry.
Short term, it's good for both parties.
Jerry takes care of his people. He's going to get him the guaranteed money that he deserves.
He does.
He's brought a lot of money in jersey sales.
Yeah.
Jerry realizes that.
And with that, before we wrap up, I wanted to let all of our listeners and viewers know about a really cool giveaway that my buddy Andrew Gatto is actually setting up. He runs an Instagram page called Angels Top Plays. You should go follow it if you don't already. He's a big Angels fan, especially if you love baseball. And he's got a couple instructions up on his latest post on how to enter a giveaway to win 2 free tickets to the Angels opening home game against the Seattle Mariners later on next week. So again, it's Angels Top Plays on Instagram. Go give it a follow. Learn how you can enter the sweepstakes to win those 2 tickets, and give it a shot. Who knows? You might wind up at an Angels opening day game, which would be a lot of fun. I know I'm entering the contest myself. So, once again, thank you all for listening. This has been Bix and K. We're with you every Tuesday from 2:30 to 4. We'll be back next week, and we will make sure that all of our social media is up and running. Sorry to my viewers that normally listen in on my Facebook live feed. Fortunately, we had some difficulties with that today, but we will get that all ironed out for you guys. Beyond that, have a great rest of your Tuesday, and we'll see you next week.
Thank you so much, guys. Take care.